toothbrushes of resident students using a bathroom shared by at least 9 people. 60% of the toothbrushes were contaminated with fecal matter, regardless of storage method. That's disgusting. That is really sickening. Brushers who have a bathroom to themselves are likely sticking tiny poop molecules into their own mouth. Oh, come on. That's insane. That is really insane. So what are you supposed to do about this? Researchers found no practical method for daily protection from fecal contamination, but recommended that students or other communal bathroom users follow the hygienic tips of the ADA, including, listen to this idiocy. You have to tell a college student, don't share toothbrushes? That you have to tell a college student that? Rinse your toothbrush before and after use? You have to tell the morons that? Wait, what else? And avoid the cross-contamination risks of close-quarter storage. In other words, don't lay your toothbrush on your roommate's toothbrush. Stupid. This is insane. Scientists also recommend against using a container or case, which encourages bacterial growth. This is stupid. What have they lost? Common sense, these idiots? Toothbrushes that are stored upright and open air will dry best. Come on. Nonsense story. Who would share a toothbrush? They share needles now for drugs. Why not? Speaking of bacteria, I saw another health-related article. I'm not going to talk about white privilege and how those dangerous degenerates who've trained school districts not to discipline black children because it shows white privilege, and it's just a cultural misunderstanding. So they're running amok, beating people up, punching teachers. The schools are out of control. More school districts report chaos after white privilege theory influences discipline rules. Gee, I'm shocked. As a former teacher, I'm just shocked. I'm shocked that they gave him a pass. And who gave him this idea? A bunch of perverts from San Francisco. That's who. Anyway, gut check on Parkinson's new findings on bacteria levels. Listen to your gut as common advice when faced with an important decision. Researchers are now heeding his words to gain further insights on how Parkinson's disease. Again, another story that makes no sense. Anyway, it's all about the immune system and not to kill off the good bacteria in your gut. But I have to tell you about it because there are specific bacterial levels affected in Parkinson's disease and free copies of Mecca to everyone who gets on the air.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
I heard it in the movie American Hustle. I missed that movie when it came out, then I saw it on TV in part. I fell in love with the movie. I started watching it. I watched it all over again. It's probably one of the greatest, top 10 great American films ever made. It came and went. I'd rank it as good, if not better, than The Godfather. Because it captures the ab scam. Remember the ab scam thing in the 70s? Many of you remember it, many of you don't. Where the mafia, in cahoots with the FBI, you don't know who's worse, by the way, the gangsters or the FBI, I don't know who's more ruthless and who's worse. The FBI or the mafia set up congressmen to bring them down with bribes, and it was caught on tape. That movie is sort of about that, and one of the key players in it. I love that film, but the music was amazing, the music score. And that's why anyone who thinks they're going to make a movie. You know what I love to do is when I watch a movie, I watch the credits at the end, or I go on IMDb and you look at the full staff, right? It's like 100 people involved in picking music, 50 people involved in this, 80 people involved in that. That's why the production is so good. Yeah, I know. You got a camera now. You're a movie maker, right? You got an iPhone. I'll put it on the internet. It'll go viral. Go viral. You make 4 cents. Everyone's a filmmaker. That's why I never made a movie. There's either you're gonna do something really well, or don't do it at all. That's why I do radio and nothing else other than write books. That's it. I'm not a filmmaker. And people confuse themselves today because they think because they have an iPhone, they're a movie maker. Everyone's Cecil B. DeMille, and Coppola put together. Well, pick your favorite director. Speaking of creativity and psychosis, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I could ask you a loaded question like, creative people who are nuts. Who doesn't? But why do creative people think they have to act nuts? Some of the most creative people I ever met don't act nuts, by the way. And I was always shocked as a young man when I was trying to be something. When I met actually great artists and writers, which were occasionally, they were very straight looking. They generally dressed in a suit and tie. They didn't put their hair in a crazy way or, a nipple ring or whatever. They didn't have to put on an act. It's like the poseurs in the cafes in San Francisco. They're all waiting to be discovered. Don't you love that people sit in cafes with their laptops or whatever they're doing, writing away, and if you come in and talk, they look at you like you're disturbing them. They're working on something important, some poetry. They're still living at home and they're 30 years old. They don't have a job. They went to Stanford or some expensive school. It cost the parents $125,000 a year. They can't get a job because they're lazy. They have no motivation, but they're sure they're going to write a great film script or a novel. So instead of staying home and working hard, they go and do it in a cafe where everyone can watch them. And then they stare at you if you talk too loud near them, like you're disturbing them in a public cafe. Hemingway knew what they were called. They had a name for them, poseurs, P-O-S-E-U-R-S. It's a French word. It's never been a better word for most people in America today who've never created anything but think they can. Line one, Nicholas, go ahead, please. What's your topic?
Yes, hi. Well, regarding what you were talking about, creativity, I feel that it's not necessarily about a person who's overly emotional or intuitive. I feel it's more within the genetics of the person and the intelligence and intellect, along with the consciousness that one has that other people that don't have.
Well, I don't think you're saying anything unique. This article was a study of creative people, and they said that creativity and psychosis share a common genetic source.
You know, but
They said they compared genetic and medical data from 86,000 Icelanders. They established a DNA signature which pointed to a doubled risk for schizophrenia and an increase of a third for bipolar disorder. But that's not unusual. I mean, most autistic people are edgy, right? What does that mean?
I mean,
what does it mean, edgy? The thing is to control the edgy, not to go with the edgy. See, here's the people. A lot of creative people ape the creative people. They make believe they're more creative than they are by acting out or aping what they think is a creative person. The thing is to marshal those creative urges and create something with it and control them. Don't you think that's the issue?
Well, you know, that's a good point that you made. And, you know, not necessarily every study is a legitimate study as well. And, you know, they could purposely take, you know...
All right, well, let's not start in with, now you're doing science all of a sudden. Not only are you a Picasso, but now you're already modifying the science study. Are you an artist yourself?
Oh, yes, I am. You know, I mean, I'm not purposely making my life about being an artist, but...
I mean, are you a productive artist? Do you make a living at it?
No, I don't make a living out of it. I write songs. I try to...
All right, you see, here's the problem. A lot of people are creative, but they're not good enough to make a living at it. Then they'll say, well, I haven't been discovered yet. That's often not true. That's very rare. And many people have a creative spark in them. In fact, most of us do, incidentally. But that doesn't mean you're an artist. Look at children. I've studied this my whole life. It's something that's I've been interested in since I'm a little kid. Because I was always different. I always knew I was different. I didn't know how I was different, but I was different than the other boys. And believe me, I paid the price for it. My own father used to look at me and think that there was something wrong with me because I wasn't like the other kids. And I remember he really put an onus on me, a bad one. He said, you know, he'd look at me when I was 3, 4 years old, 5, when I could think. And he'd stare at my eyes. He never understood me because he knew they were very deep and they had a certain shine to them. And he was afraid of me. As a typical, let us say, I don't know how to put it without putting him down, an uneducated peasant from Europe with no education and no higher aspirations other than to make a buck and get through life. Truthfully, that's all it was. He was afraid of the child who was creative. And so he ridiculed me constantly, and he'd look at me and he'd say, I don't know. He says, look at you. He says, either you're going to be a genius or a madman. I said, well, that's very nice when you're 5 to hear that. Who would say that to a son? Would you ever say that to a child? You're going to either be a genius or a madman and repeat it over and over again, unless you were trying to hurt the child? So I've had to overcome a lot of obstacles to achieve what I've achieved. And it took me a long time of analyzing what that statement meant to realize he didn't know what he was talking about. He was just trying to run me down because he was afraid of me and intimidated by my creativity and, frankly, the spark of life that was in me. But let's put him aside for a moment. It's a long time ago. He's dead a long time. May he rest in peace. I want to make a larger point that's not about me per se, although everything's about me at the end of the day. That's all a talk radio is. It's all about us. It's a talk radio of all the mediums is one of personality. It's personality driven. Anyone can read news stories on the internet. Everyone can talk about news stories from the internet. All right, fine. Who can't do it themselves today? 20 years ago, you needed a talk show host to find the stories for you. You don't need them anymore. What do you need them for? You go on the Drudge Report and 3 other sites and you know the news and you go on with your day. But you need them to tell you their opinion? Fine, maybe you like it. That's fine. But what I'm saying to you is something different. So creativity is the issue. Psychosis is the issue. They're not necessarily intertwined. One is separated from the other. Not all creative people don't have to be nuts. And all nutty people don't have to be creative. I mean, we all know about the famous Van Gogh painting. I'm sorry, I didn't say Van Gogh. I realize many of you are experts on the pronunciation. And you come back. I had a friend once, an uncreative guy who resented me from top to bottom every time I published a book. So he went to Holland, went to the Van Gogh Museum, and he came back. I said, so how were the Van Gogh paintings? He said, oh, you mean Van Gogh? That schmuck lives in Berkeley. Never amounted to anything. Became a doctor just to get the drugs in the cabinet. That was his idea of creativity, to go to medical school to abuse drugs. But nevertheless, Van Gogh. But we're all familiar with the Van Gogh paintings in the madhouse, right? He did go crazy, and okay, that's another story. Now, probably I could have saved him with a high dose of vitamin B1 and possibly, I don't know, magnesium. I probably could have stopped him from the schizophrenic meltdown. There's no question in my mind that a high dose of thiamine, niacin, folic acid, magnesium could have stopped the meltdown. But okay, they didn't know anything about that then. I have learned through my life that when I get to the edge of my own psyche, when I can't take it anymore, do you ever get there? What do? You run, you work out, right? Everyone has their way of coping, right, Robert? Doesn't everyone listening to this show as a human being reach those points? I doubt that there's a so-called ordinary person out there who doesn't reach that point in their own mind. It doesn't matter whether you're a soldier, sailor, artist. It doesn't matter what you are. Everybody has limits to their capacity to deal with conflict, pain, loss. So how you cope with it is very interesting. And artists generally cope by creating. You understand that? Now, some artists will actually feed that feeling of they're going to snap. They'll feed it with drugs. They'll feed it in the old days with alcohol. You know, it used to be popular for writers to be drunks. Remember that? In the 30s and 40s, they used to joke about being alcoholics. And they would drink themselves silly, thinking that they're creative more. Who knows, whatever. I doubt very much. If you look at what you write or paint when you're drunk, what does it look like? Garbage. It requires great control to do anything right. It's like driving a race car. You know, you wouldn't want to drive a race car drunk or high, would you? So why would you want to drive a paintbrush when you're stoned? Nevertheless, you know, I'm not going to say different strokes for different folks because I'm a strong believer in discipline in art. And I think that only discipline creates great art. I think that undisciplined work creates undisciplined minds create undisciplined work, and I'm not a real fan of the gibberish that comes out of most people's mouths or what they write or what they paint. So that's my belief. I'm more of a classicist when it comes to art. And so what I'm saying to you is there's a way to control those edgy impulses. When you get there, there are ways to pull yourself back, and everyone has that way of coping. You can run around the block in 3 minutes. You can do 10 push-ups. You can simply go outside and breathe the air for 10 minutes. You can take a large dose of B vitamins. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to stop that edginess. The problem is most of us have been taught to take drugs, whether they be, I can't name them, they're sedatives, and you become a drug addict. That doesn't help your creativity. So I think this is a great a topic, and I'm glad that some of you got interested in it. But this issue of creativity and psychosis sharing a genetic source is kind of silly in a way. I mean, what have they really found in the genome? They look at the genomes of people engaged in artistic work, and they say that there's a DNA signature that's in common, and it shows a doubled risk for schizophrenia and an increase of a third for bipolar disorder. Now, you know, these are very sensitive issues for most of you. I know schizophrenia does exist, but bipolar disorder is not as common as it is said to be, in my opinion. It used to be known as manic depression. Then they changed it to bipolar. And a lot of people use it as an excuse to get disability benefits, to get away with virtual murder at work, to get special privileges in school. You know, oh, my daughter's bipolar. Well, no, she's probably just a troublemaker. and so you want everyone to cater to you because you come up with an illness. And many of you get offended when I say things like